Week 14, it really does fly by. The last week of the fantasy regular season for most people, unless you play in different leagues or whatever, but for most people it is. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there. It feels like this year I was kind of looking at just across my leagues. There was like a couple top heavy teams, a couple bad, a couple good teams, really good teams, a couple bad teams, and then 80% of the league kind of jumbled in the middle there. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that this means a lot for them. So we'll jump right into it. Starting with the running backs, our rankings this week for the running backs, we break them up into tiers, kind of group them together in terms of the players they are. We have 6 teams on bye, and then plus we don't count Thursday night guys either. So, kind of a short list here a little bit. Number one overall, we have, Saquon, Kamara, Bijan, Kyren, Achane. Not really any explanation there needed. I'm pretty sure all those guys have finished as RB1 or very close to some point this year. I'm not sure if Achane or Kyren have, but pretty sure Bijan has. I know Saquon and Kamara have. They're all top tier guys as well. And then the no-brainer tier, Chase Brown, who I was looking at it. He's the RB14 on the year, and he really started to get more carries around week 4. And since then, he's the RB7, so he's been pretty awesome. James Cook, James Conner, Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle makes it into here, which congratulations to Rico Dowdle. But last week, I didn't realize he had 22 carries and 3 catches. He's kind of always been good for 2, 3, 4 catches. Now he's getting the carries, 19 and 22 the last 2 weeks. And a good matchup. And then Isaac Garendo. I'm curious if he belongs here or not. So give me your thoughts on Garendo or any of the other guys you want to talk about. And then I want to share a couple things about, the Garendo situation. But what do you think about Garendo being here?
I think it's definitely a little risky, but I mean, you spent your fab on him, and if you're stuck, then I don't mind it. But I don't know if he belongs necessarily in the no-brainer. I don't know. It's tough to really say because, we haven't seen it yet. We did see a good game from him back in week 8 against Dallas, but that's Dallas. So it's a little scary. I'd probably put him more in the solid RB2s, but he definitely has the upside because, we've seen it year over year when it comes to the Niners just, next man up, you're going to get all the stuff. And he should be the next guy up. Like, I can't imagine Abanikanda or what's the other guy's name? Patrick Taylor?
Yeah, Patrick Taylor.
Like, I don't know. Maybe we'll see a little bit more use check in there or something. But I think he picked him up with the intention. Like, if you're win to get in, then I don't mind it as an RB2.
Yeah, we did see a little bit more of like use check, like week 1 and 2. Use check had some targets and stuff like that. He's never going to get many carries, but I don't know. That's part of the reason is I don't think Abanikanda is going to come in and just do much week 1. Patrick Taylor may be more of a special teams guy. It is interesting though to have him here just because, I think that we talked about this last week and stuff. Like Jordan Mason, the perception of him was like, oh yeah, he was awesome, and like he was a really good, find as well, and kind of a Band-Aid if you drafted CMC and Mason, and it kind of, it helped you out a little bit. But if you really look at Jordan Mason, his stats weren't as good as it comes out. He had 2 really good weeks, and he had 3. He played in 7 weeks, essentially. He had 3 really good weeks, and then 3 weeks where you're not disappointed, but you're not excited. 9.8, 8.7, 7.9 in half PPR. Just because, like we talked about, he doesn't catch the ball. They don't really throw to any running backs besides CMC, and they're not scoring touchdowns. It's just the offense in general. So it could be the same for Garendo, but I think you're probably right. He probably does belong a little bit more into one of these like RB2 tiers. It was really hard to kind of just rank people this week just because it gets shallow like very, very quickly
Sure.
this week. So I think you're starting him no matter what. Is he a no-brainer? Probably not. But like you said, if you spent all that fab for him, you're probably starting him. So any other guys you want to touch on there or you disagree with, or you think we're good to move on here?
I mean, Connor hasn't really been super good, but I don't think you're putting him on the bench by any stretch. He's still getting the workload, very involved in the passing game. It's just the Cardinals have been a little bit dysfunctional the last couple of weeks, but yeah, I think he's still belongs in that category. And all these other guys, I think they're right there,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just hard. Like when you look at James Conner, like he's had he's had 16 catches the last 4 weeks. So 3, 5, 5, and 3, 17 carries last week. Minnesota was a tough defense to run on, but he still got almost 70 yards, and it's just not getting the touchdown, kind of like what you said. 81 yards with 3 catches is fine. Plus, he was always an opportunity to get into the end zone. So, but you're right. He hasn't been, a little bit disappointing, really just the last couple of weeks because, again, no touchdown. So, high-end RB2s, basically must starts this week. Maybe you can make an argument they're in the no-brainer tier. Aaron Jones probably does belong in that no-brainer tier, although they did kind of benched him. He fumbled twice early on, and they kind of sat him for a bit. I guess that's the only reason I'm putting him in here, but only 5 carries and 3 catches in a close game last week. I think they were up. No, they were down most of that game. Minnesota,
they were.
So, yeah.
Right. They took the lead at the kind of the last minute, I don't know, actual minute, but it was looking pretty good for Arizona to actually beat them. So that might be partially due to why he didn't get as much work. He only had 5 carries last week. Still played a little over half the snaps. So yeah, I think he's still throw him right back in there. And just keep rolling. You're going to get these disappointing games every now and then.
Yeah. And Tyrone Tracy, he still also played 75% of the snaps. I think him and Singletary both had 9 carries. Tracy got the goal line stuff. So that kind of, he had 65 total yards with 2 catches and a touchdown, which is good. And he was still playing a lot, but I put him in here just because the first game off of him fumbling the game away and having 3 fumbles in two games, we saw, Singletary get a little bit more run there, at least more touches. So, but both kind of must starts, solid RB2s. I'm not even convinced about this tier at all. I guess Najee Harris is always going to be an RB2. That's just who he is. He's been pretty good this year. I think he had a bunch of catches last week, which is a little bit not like him. But you look at him, he's the RB21 in points per game. He doesn't really bust. His worst game in half PPR is 6.4. If you want to consider that a bust, okay. I don't consider anything above 7.5 as a bust in half PPR, and he's only been under that one time. He's been double digit points in most of his majority of his games, 21 points, 22 points last week because he had the 6 catches. So he's just a solid RB2. I'm never going to consider him high end, although he can have a good game. Pacheco, are they going to, what's the split going to be here? I don't know. Yeah, I think he played 35% of the snaps. Is that just going to go up? Is Kareem Hunt still going to be there? I don't know. And then Jaylen Warren, I'm not even sure why I put Jaylen Warren in here. Is he an RB2? Is he not? I don't know. I'm just looking at, he's had, 11 catches the last 3 weeks, 65 total yards as well in each of the last 3 weeks, essentially 68, 64, 64, along with 4, 3, and 4 catches, the touchdown in there. So I don't know. Maybe he's not solid RB2. Maybe he's a flex play, but I didn't make that tier here. So I don't know. Tell me where I'm wrong, or does Jaylen Warren belong there? Does Pacheco, are you worried about him still being limited, or what's going on in this tier?
Well, kind of like what you just said, we're talking about and like, I don't think you made the disclaimer. These are not rankings. These are just kind of bunching guys. But we're talking about, 14 through 17. Like, we're not even to a full 24 guys yet. And it's like, because the next category is you might have to start. And I think Pacheco and Warren kind of belong in that category, obviously, like Pacheco, I don't think a lot of people started him last week. And if you did, you should have tempered expectations. He's coming back from a big injury, and it's the Raiders, but it's like they've been winning games without him. So it's kind of like, like they're obviously like they just clinched the playoffs. So it's like, don't run this guy like super hard. Like, you're going to need him down the stretch. Mm-hmm. So all of that was pretty predictable. I don't know if he's going to get a whole lot more, like probably closer to 50% of the snaps. This is like a pretty important game for them against the Chargers, who have been playing really well. So we'll probably see a little more usage from him now that he's like back. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Jaylen Warren, geez, like I guess it's good to see. I guess
the way I look at it, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's good to see like he's doing what he did last year, as far as he's back involved in the passing game since week 6. So obviously much better in PPR. But yeah, like it's nice to see him kind of working his way into this offense. Obviously the identity of the team has changed quite a bit with Russ. So yeah, it's hard to know. Like, they're not going to lean on him nearly as much as they did last year, probably, but he's still involved. They need him.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is like the last 4 weeks, he's gotten you at least basically 9 PPR points, and this week, I think that's like an RB2, considering we have no Derrick Henry, no Broncos guys, no Joe Mixon, no Jonathan Taylor, no Ramondre Stevenson, no Brian Robinson, and we're not counting Josh Jacobs, Montgomery, and Gibbs, So yeah. All those guys basically not on this list. So I think that's why I kind of put him there. But yeah, it's probably, you might have to start. I'm okay with starting a guy like Jaylen Warren, knowing he's probably going to give me 3 catches at least, and that's going to give him a pretty solid floor in PPR versus, the next guys like, where it's like you might have to start these guys, and I don't feel completely confident, which is kind of crazy, I guess, because like given the names on this list, Nick Chubb, who's been one of the best running backs in the NFL since he's entered the league, but obviously, I don't know, the usage is just kind of weird with him. Like they weren't really using him in that game. I guess because they were playing catch up, and he's not a part of that or whatever. Like he's had one good game since coming back, but that's because he had 2 touchdowns. Like in terms of yardage and stuff, it's not really there. Chuba Hubbard, I'm just a little bit worried about. Jonathan Brooks, I imagine his snap share is going to go up a little bit. I can't imagine it's going to go down, and it increased to, I believe, about 21, 22%. So I would have to think it's going to go up to at least like 30% or so, and he seems to be taking the catches away from Chuba. And they're just a bad offense against the Eagles. And then Travis Etienne, who's just been like an absolute disaster this year. So, but you might have to start these guys because they're at least getting some work, and it's a tough week. So is there one guy in particular there you're most worried about or most confident in? You can be positive if you want to be, or you can choose both if you want.
Yeah. I think I'm most afraid of Chuba, honestly, just given that matchup. Granted, last week Chuba was still, or 2 weeks ago, he was good against Kansas City, which is not an easy thing to do. And that was mostly in the run game. I can't imagine like the Panthers are going to be like very competitive in this game, but it is the NFL, like this will be like a game that the Eagles lose because it's like, why not lose to the Panthers kind of a thing, like
we've been better. They've been better recently.
Yeah, they have been playing a lot better for sure. Mm-hmm. But we could see a little more involvement from Jonathan Brooks like throughout this final stretch, which could really make both of them like kind of like low end flexes, but Chuba's just been too good to like really bench, but it is tough because like you were saying, this is kind of a win to get in week for a lot of people. ETN, I'm confident enough that he is the guy there, but just this offense, man, like they just can't really move it. Like Mac Jones actually did a decent job last week, like just moving the offense somewhat. So and Chubb's always going to have a touchdown upside, like he played well 2 weeks ago against this same team, but it was kind of one of those games where it was a Chubb game because the snow started falling pretty heavily and everything. So I don't think you can pencil him in for 2 touchdowns. And he's not the same guy this year. Like, have we seen like the big play from him yet? Like he was good for one of those every game, like, the last several years of his career, but still waiting for that 40-yard break off run.
Yeah. And we say like Etienne's the guy, but he was in a 50-50 split with Tank Bigsby. It was like 55-45 essentially. And they're on a bad offense. So it's just bad. That's why I want to bench these guys, Kareem Hunt, Tank Bigsby, Gus Edwards. Like Kareem Hunt only played 35 or 40% of the snaps. They're going up against a pretty good run defense. Tank Bigsby's in a 50-50 split on a bad team. Very bad team. And then Gus Edwards playing one of the best run defenses here. And he's kind of a touchdown or bust kind of guy. So, these guys, I think you for sure should be benching and take a shot maybe somewhere else. Maybe the next guys like flexes at best, like Amir Abdullah. I don't really know. Like, I do think if you play in PPR, maybe you can get away with it. Like, I'd play Amir Abdullah over like Kareem Hunt or something. I don't even know if I would. I have to think about that. But I do think Abdullah is going to give you maybe 3 catches or something. And Jonathan Brooks, it's going to be interesting. Like, I think people are going to want to take a shot on him, but it could be bad. It could be good. Like, I would take a shot on Jonathan Brooks over a guy like Gus Edwards, I think, just hoping he gives me some catches and gets a couple more carries.
Yeah. Gus definitely is the one that scares me a lot. Given that matchup and his lack of involvement in the passing game, even though I think I did see him catch a ball last week, didn't he? Holy shit, he did. So what is that, like his 10th one of his career?
Close.
Yeah, it's not crazy hyperbole. Oh, I guess he had 12 last year, so I guess I'm the asshole. But
he has 32 in his career. Since 2018.
Yeah, so that's crazy. I mean, it's not because we've seen it for so long, but yeah, definitely Gus scares me the most. Kareem Hunt, like we could see, like at least his pass catching role is still there as of last week, anyways. He still got 4 targets. He only caught 2 of them for looks like no yards apparently. They didn't even put a 0 in there. It's just the dash. So, yeah, no, I mean, obviously, like, the Chargers' run defense is really good. And, that might not be the focus. But, these guys, the Chiefs and the Chargers, they know how to play each other pretty well. So, I think Kareem Hunt, I probably feel the best about out of him, Bigsby, and Gus, but that's not saying a whole lot.
Yeah, and just because you got to remember, like Samaje Perine's there, and he's going to have his role, so you're basically splitting early down stuff. Like it was basically a 35. It was like a 35-35-25 split, basically between the 3 running backs, which is, I imagine it's not going to get better for Kareem Hunt. It's only going to go down. So, but for the sake of time, we're going to move on because we have a big injury tier here that we need to kind of sort out. This is just like my does it even matter tier, because it's like if you're starting these guys, like, are you even in the playoffs? I don't know. Like Tajay Spears, Jerome Ford, Raheem Mostert. No, thank you. Handcuffs, you guys know him. Ray Davis, Cam Akers, Singletary, maybe Kamani Vidal. We'll see if he maybe becomes a little bit more. Tyler Algier. There's other ones out there. Blake Corum, Trey Benson. The injury guys we need to kind of sort out. So, Bucky Irving, Rashad White. Obviously, if Bucky plays, he's a no-brainer. Where's Rashad White for you? Both if Bucky's there and also. Okay, let's start with if Bucky's out, because Bucky, I believe, was a limited. He was a DNP limited, so he's questionable. Let's say Bucky's out. Is Rashad White a no-brainer?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I mean, they're playing the Raiders, which I don't know if they've been any better. Let's see how far I have to go down this list to find them. They're kind of they're in the bottom part, but they're basically in the middle. So that doesn't mean a whole lot, but he's Rashad White. Like, we haven't really seen the involvement in the passing game these last few weeks, which is a little unfortunate. Since Mike Evans came back, I don't think that's necessarily why, but I feel like they've not been throwing as much. Let's see if that's true. Baker, 33, 30, 29, 31 pass attempts. Yeah, like I think Rashad White does become a no-brainer if Bucky's out, and I think he's still an RB2 if Bucky's there. These guys split so much, and Bucky's definitely looked better for sure.
Yeah.
But
Sean Tucker becomes a play as well if Bucky's out. Sean Tucker becomes a guy that you could potentially. I'd start Sean Tucker over guys like ETN and Gus Edwards and stuff like that, to be honest. I think he's going to get a bit of a run. Sounds like Brees is not going to play. Obviously, you're starting Brees if he's in. Braylon Allen, you could put it no-brainer. I would be a little bit hesitant, slightly. Isaiah Davis may take a little bit of his pass catching role, but you got to take that chance this week and just start Braylon. Sounds like Kenneth Walker is kind of doubtful. Charbonnet becomes a no-brainer, and obviously Kenneth Walker's a no-brainer. So the tiers are looking better when you start throwing these guys in here. We'll put Rashad White in the solid RB2, considering Bucky plays. What are you doing with Roschon Johnson's out, so we don't need to talk about him. What are you doing with DeAndre Swift's a no-brainer, right? Or a high-end RB2. He's basically a starter. If he plays, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is any interest in Travis Homer, I guess, who's next in line? Mr. Travis Homer, and I know they brought someone else in, or someone on their practice. They'll bring someone up if DeAndre Swift's out. Any interest in Travis Homer at all, or are you just no, thank you?
No, not really. As a desperation low-end flex, sure, because he is a guy that is going to be widely available. And the Niners have actually been really bad against the run this year. I'm trying to think. Well, it doesn't help. I'm just looking at it versus running backs. But I am looking at the breakdown, how running backs are beating them, and it's on both sides of it, it's not, it's more in the run game than the passing game. But yeah, I think you're getting real desperate there. But again, 6 teams on a bye, lots of injuries, so I wouldn't say interested, but desperate times, desperate measures. I'm starting Gus Edwards this week in a league, but it's not really a win and get in situation. It kind of is, but I have a pretty healthy tiebreaker. Yeah. So I'm not too worried about it but I'm pretty sure Swift or Gus is going to give me maybe 5 points, So if you need something more than that, and Swift is out, throw Homer in there and see what happens.
What about Sincere McCormick if Madison's out? Zamir White is out. Sincere McCormick, who has been playing well, they're kind of talking about using him more, but that may be just talk. I think throw him in the flex category because he's run the ball well when he's, it's basically him and Amir Abdullah, and they just give him the majority of the carry. So, I'd start Sincere McCormick potentially over, guys like Gus and Kareem Hunt, if Madison's out and he's questionable. So,
it's possible. I mean, I'm always a little nervous. Like, I know, like you say, especially in reference to Dynasty, it's like, yeah, sometimes these guys just come out of nowhere. And it's like, yeah, like he's been on the team for 2 years. And like, they've elevated him from the practice squad a couple of times. Isn't that right? And so like they had to basically if they wanted him available for the rest of the year, then they were just going to have to roster him. If
I remember correctly, he was on the Ravens practice squad, and they signed him off of there and stuff like that.
Okay,
maybe I'm wrong about that, but
I just see LV next to his name for team for 22 and 23.
Okay, yeah, I know he didn't record any stats in those years, so.
Right. And so that always makes me a little nervous too, where it's like you're going into the year with Madison and Zamir White, who, granted, Zamir White had a good run at the end of the season, so maybe it's not as bad. Plus the rookie Dylan Lobby, but it's just kind of like, well, this guy's already been there, and he's basically 5th on the depth chart behind some of these guys who we know aren't good. But we did see, him have some good run last week against the Chiefs, so they might want to see what they've gotten him. The matchup's not bad against the Bucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, I'd probably start him over Gus Edwards.
Yeah, I think so. And again, he's looked well running the ball. So
yeah.
Into the receivers, I think a little bit easier. We'll see, but number 1 overall, it's Chase Jefferson, who I don't think has been number 1 overall this year, but it's still Justin Jefferson. AJ Brown, Mike Evans, solely for the fact they need to get him. I think it's 93 yards per game now, 95, and they are very aware of that, and they're going to try and get that, I think, and they have a good matchup. Puka Nacua, who I think is he can beat Buffalo. He's the guy that can beat them. Well, both of them can, but no-brainers. T. Higgins, really good matchup against the Cowboys. Cooper Kupp. Tyreek Hill, maybe. I don't know. He had a good game last week, but kind of a fluke, I guess. But I don't know if he should be no-brainer. You can talk about that if you want. George Pickens, Devontae Adams. Not even sure if he should be a no-brainer, but he is getting a lot of targets, so it's tough to bench. Calvin Ridley and JSN, especially if DK Metcalf's out, which we will get to. But any one guy in particular that you want to touch on there with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Tyreek Hill, he hasn't been killing you these last few weeks because he's got a touchdown 3 out of the last 4. But that one he caught, I remember we watched it together. One he caught wasn't even intended for him. It was intended for Jonnu, and it bounced off his hands. And then Tyreek was behind him in the end zone already, and he got it. Mm-hmm. That was last week, right?
Yeah, that was Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like, man, and that was right towards the end of the game too. But what Tyreek's upside is. He's just not a focal point of the offense right now. Everything's running through Achane and Jonnu, but you're still starting him, but it is scary, but it's do you really have 3 other guys to start above Tyreek Hill? I don't.
Sure.
I'd be surprised if you
go
do.
for it. Yeah. If you do, go for it. Where do you think he is from weeks 9 to 13? Where do you think he ranks? If you had to just guess, I know you're probably looking at his stats. So if you,
I am looking.
Because he hasn't killed you. He hasn't killed you those weeks, which is why I'm curious. I'm going to look now. Where would you say?
Wide receiver 30.
Ooh, really? Wide receiver 13 in overall.
What?
Wide receiver 13 overall, and wide receiver 21 in points per game. So a lot lower there. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he hasn't killed you. 4 for 80 is not a killer. 3 for 16 and a touchdown. 7 for 61 and a touchdown. 5 for 4. It's not a bust game in there. Really since week 7. So we can even go back to week 8 if I wanted to. So yeah, I mean, he's producing wide receiver 14 since week 8 in total points and wide receiver 23 in points per game. So yeah. I think he's kind of a must start this week with all these guys on bye.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. It's like you said, like 21 on per game basis, because obviously there's been a lot of buys mixed in there for other teams, not for him. But yeah, I am actually really surprised how well he's played, or how well he's ranked against other guys. Like when you say that, I was thinking a lot lower. Like I was thinking like a mid-range wide receiver 3.
Yeah. Wide receiver 2s, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Brian Thomas, Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen. All these guys have been pretty good. Keenan Allen's been good as of late since the offensive coordinator changed. Lots of targets, lots of catches, good amount of yards. Marvin Harrison did get 12 targets, only had 5 for 60 and a touchdown, but still kind of consider him there. Garrett Wilson, a little sketchy there about him being a wide receiver 2. Brian Thomas, has produced with Mac Jones, which is good to see. I just think he's a good receiver. Jerry Jeudy, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he's not going to have a 230-yard game, and he won't. But the thing with Jerry Jeudy, he's been really good since Jameis took over. 5 for 79, 7 for 73, 6 for 142, and a touchdown, 6 for 85, 9 for 235. My question for you in this tier is, should Jerry Jeudy be a no-brainer, considering those stats? You just looked at Tyreek's stats, and he was wide receiver 13 overall. Like, Jeudy has to be top 5 with those stats since Jameis took over. And week 8.
Easily. Like, easily top 5. He's probably like wide receiver 2. Obviously that's going to be a little weighted from
wide receiver week, 3 in points per game. He had a bye, and total points. So yeah, he's been the wide receiver 3.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I mean, we shouldn't be entirely surprised. I mean, I know it's kind of, he's kind of got like a little bit of a smudge on his record. Like, he never really did it in Denver, like what we expected, I guess. But like he dealt with some bad quarterback play, and you make a lot of excuses, and that's how this year started, kind of, for him, with Deshaun Watson. And so it's really nice to see him getting going. That game last week was just out of control.
Yeah.
And Jameis is going to just keep slinging it. So,
yeah. So no brainer then for him.
Yeah. Oh, and
Cedric Tillman's out too.
Yeah. Tillman's out also. So I think he easily belongs in the no brainer.
And even with Watson, like we were talking about, Jeudy is like, this guy's getting a lot of targets and he's giving you like solid production, 10, 9.8, 6.7, 10.2. That was his first 4 weeks. And then he had that terrible middle stretch, 2.1, 2.3, and then Jameis took over. So I'm fine with him being in that no-brainer tier. The next group of guys here are interesting ones. Wide receiver 3s. It's a pretty big tier. Move that up. Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Devontae Smith. Although I think Devontae Smith, you can potentially move up with Goddard out. Jordan Addison, Mooney, Worthy, Waddle, Hopkins. Like, a couple of these guys, like, I think could obviously be better. Like Devontae Smith, Waddle had a really big week, but it's been 1 week. I kind of want to see it one more time, but I'm still probably going to try and find a way. This is just how, again, it's not like a ranking necessarily. It's like what I'm expecting from them, throwing them in my lineup. So, obviously they can give you more. The 49ers guys, it's tough. Deebo doesn't make sense why he's not very good. Khalil Shakir gives you a nice solid floor. Mooney, if Cousins can throw a freaking touchdown and play well. Worthy's had some interesting usage the last few weeks. I think he's been, I want to say like a top 24 wide receiver the last, I think just 3 weeks, which is obviously a small sample size, but 4, 5, 6, and 7 targets. So expect 8 targets this week because he's going up by 1. And even if you go back to a couple weeks before that, Since October 20th, 8, 8, 2, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 targets. So he's getting solid. He's giving you a solid floor now. He's no longer like a boom bust guy. Any guys here I should be moving up or moving out, or that you particularly want to touch on here? I know it's a big tier.
Yeah. It is nice to see. And like we see this every year with rookies, like they tend to get a little more involved after their bye week. Granted, the Chiefs did have an early bye week back in week 6. So, like it is nice to see him get integrated into the offense. And, I've heard from plenty of people that, the Chiefs, Andy Reid's offense is not an easy one to necessarily pick up. So it's good to see like them getting a little bit more like comfortable with throwing him out there, So yeah, like Worthy, I do like as an wide receiver 3. I'm hoping, like Mooney can actually get like where he needs to be. I think it's been more on Cousins, like you said, than Mooney. These last couple of games, like there were just some bad throws this last week to Mooney. So I think this could be a get right game for him easily. So wide receiver 3 for sure. Devontae Smith, I think he kind of belongs a little bit higher, especially with Goddard out. Like he's probably in that wide receiver 2 category.
I think I agree with you.
Yeah. Man, Debo, how disappointing like has he been, like I'm hoping I'm hoping we see some more rushing attempts from him over these next few weeks. Like that kind of always was his little bit of his superpower. We haven't seen a ton of that this year yet. So I don't know. I mean, San Francisco, like they really need to get in. They need to get right if they want to try and even stay competitive, like they're still on that bubble for sure.
Yeah, Debo, when he returns kicks, though, he looks good. So it's not like, I don't know, it's weird. It's really weird. So I think a lot of it's just like lack of touchdowns. Like if you kind of look at it, like he's never been a huge yardage guy. I know he had that one big year, but like it is total yards as well. Like he hasn't been getting that 20 yards the last 3 weeks, but I don't know. It's rough. It's rough, but you kind of have to start him this week.
Yeah, I think so. Like if you want his big games, like you're gonna have to start him, kind of a thing. But I know it's kind of easy to say, harder to do for sure, because this could be your last week of fantasy. But I think he definitely has, like we've seen it too much in the past, like the upside. Jawan Jennings, he's playing most, all of the snaps basically. Like he hasn't been great since the bye. I mean, well, he's had one really good game, but not necessarily killing you either. He's getting the targets like we want to see. Hopefully Purdy's getting a little bit healthier with his shoulder. So I don't mind that.
The next tier, I think it's interesting here. I think Elijah Moore is a wide receiver 3 now that Tillman's out. My only concern was like we haven't seen the 3 of them on the field together, and all of them have good games. So I'm fine with moving him up. Nick Westbrook-Akine, amazingly, since Hopkins has left and he took over and basically started playing every snap, the guy has 20 catches, 300 and something yards on the season. He's the wide receiver 11 since Hopkins left in total points. And I think he's like wide receiver 15. This is half PPR because he literally gets a touchdown every week. And his touchdown streak started before Hopkins left. But the guy, you look at it, you're like, okay, yeah, he's touchdown or bust. And he kind of is, but he's the wide receiver freaking 11, man. I think we just need to start treating him like that. Like he's just catching touchdowns. So is he a wide receiver 3 as well?
Him and MVS are basically the same guys, I'm just saying, like if they don't get that touchdown, you're gonna be sad, But they have that big play potential for sure. Obviously, a lot less attractive in full PPR. Was kind of surprised that, and maybe just because Levis had to throw it a bunch more. I'll look at his numbers right now. But he had Westbrook Akine had 8 targets last week.
Yeah, that's why I was like hesitant on like I get what you're saying with the MVS thing. MVS hasn't had more than 4 targets in a game. Westbrook Akine 8, 5, 6. 6 another week. Like he's getting a little bit more targets, and there's a couple games in there. If he didn't get the touchdown, like if you're taking away the yards and the touchdown, then yeah, you're probably right. But if you're just taking away the touchdown and you're keeping the yards, then you'd be okay. 2 for 117. Obviously, 100 of that came on that touchdown, or 98 of it. 5 for 50.
And the matchups are really good too. Well, Jacksonville, it's like they're terrible, and where are the Giants? It looks like they're middle of the pack.
They're middle.
So it's not a juicy matchup, but they're definitely not anyone that you shy away from. So who else are you gonna throw to besides MVS? Taysom Hill's not there,
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Yeah, it's like who else he thrown to? And Carr's been good with the deep ball. We saw it with Shaheed the last 2 years, and MVS is kind of filling that in. Yeah, it's one of those like if you need to chase points and you're down bad type of thing, or you're looking like you're gonna lose because you have a bunch of guys on bye. Like MVS is a guy to throw in there and to help you kind of make up those. Amari Cooper, like, what are you doing with this guy? Since Buffalo, he's had 4 for 66 and a touchdown. That was his first game. He obviously missed some time as well. 1 for 3, 2 for 55, 3 for 12. He's only playing about 50% of the snaps. And at this point, we're kind of like, what is it? He's 2 weeks removed from the injury. He's 6 weeks on the team now, and his snap share has not gone up. Keon Coleman might be coming back, by the way. Are you just trying to bench Amari Cooper for the most part? Like the guy's just not. It's just weird. I don't know. Like it's very strange that they're not using him.
He's probably in the next category as the dart throw. It's like we haven't really seen big upside from him besides that first game, and that wasn't even big upside. It was just like, oh, he caught like a 40-yard touchdown or whatever. So I don't know. The offense is just rolling without him. So it's hard to trust. It's like they obviously don't need him. Could he have a big game? Of course. Like we know he's a good player. He's playing on one of the best offenses in the NFL right now. So I think like throwing him in as your flex and hoping I think he does basically belong in this category. What are you doing? That's the category.
Yeah. Like what are we doing with these guys? You mentioned dart throws. I mean, these are guys that they're getting some targets each and every week type of thing. And I don't mind throwing a dart. You kind of, you probably need a touchdown, but it's a Leggett, Thielen, Adunze, Michael Wilson. I do want to touch on this injury tier to kind of wrap up. CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Jacoby Myers, DK Metcalf, Ladd McConkey, and DJ Moore. If those guys are playing, I am starting all those guys essentially. Like, I don't really want to bench any of them if they're in. They've just been too good, especially this week, to bench.
Yeah, too involved in their offenses too. Like everyone that you just named is basically the number one on their team. Yeah. Besides maybe Metcalf, like maybe that argument can be made just depending on how you're defining that.
Yeah, but then they throw more than any other team, so it doesn't really matter. I guess it's what does it do to these other guys? Like does CeeDee Lamb missing open things up for like Jalen Tolbert and Brandon Cooks because they're playing the Bengals and Russell Wilson just had like the third most passing yards ever at the age of whatever he is, 36, 35, over 400 yards, just turned 36. And that was his third most passing yards in a game, I think. Because the Bengals defense is like historically bad. So it's like Brandon Cooks and Tolbert, like, are they in for a play if Lamb's out?
Honestly, I'm kind of okay starting Brandon Cooks this week as a low end flex already, even if Lamb is there, just given that matchup. and the 7 targets in his first game back last week. I mean, is Dallas, are they even eliminated yet? They're not, right?
No.
Like,
No.
yeah, I was going to say, because they weren't 2 weeks ago, and they won their last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even...
There's only I know it feels like a lot more. I think there's only like 4 teams that are technically eliminated. There's some bad teams, obviously, but there's only a couple teams that are. Yeah, teams eliminated are the Patriots, Jags, Raiders, and Giants. Panthers aren't eliminated. Bears, Saints, Jets aren't even eliminated. Titans aren't eliminated. So, Cowboys are still in the mix. I mean, they got 5 wins. So,
yeah, I know that is a lot. It's still a third of the season essentially. A little less than that, but yeah. So fair enough. Like, let's see what can happen. But yeah, like I said, like Brandon Cooks, he's actually a guy that I picked up going into this week because I got Josh Downs and Tillman was questionable, and they do have Lamb too, and they're the Monday night game, so Brandon Cooks is probably a decent enough like pick him up, especially if you have Lamb, because you need a pivot option for Monday night. So and Tolbert would be the next on the list for that if Cooks has already got swooped up, which I can't imagine he was like a popular ad, but probably there's like a decent chance he did get swooped, and so Tolbert's a good pivot.
If McConkey's out, do you like who do you like between Quentin Johnston and Palmer? Is there one that you like a little bit more?
I think it just depends on what you need. Like Palmer will be the 8 full PPR point guy, maybe. Like he's just been not involved very much. But I think you'll see a good uptick in his targets if McConkey does miss. Quentin Johnston, man, it's just like, I think we've seen too much of him. Like he's more of the touchdown upside guy, I would say. But geez, it's getting pretty desperate. Like if you're starting him, but again, like desperate times, right? Like I'd probably just like if it was full PPR, maybe even half. I would probably just try and pick up Will Dissly if he was available and start him as a flex over Quentin Johnston.
Yeah. Trey Tucker is an interesting one if Jacoby Myers is out, I think, because we've seen a couple high volume games with him, but that's kind of desperation. Parker Washington, if he plays, I don't know. I'm not going to chase it. He did have a pretty good volume, but I want to see it one more time, I guess, before I start him and rely on him to get me in the playoffs. So,
I would start all those other guys except for Trey Tucker over Parker Washington. Like, definitely want to see it again. Like, not a bad stash for now, but I don't know how you're starting him with any kind of confidence, and could eat crow on that one for sure. But man,
for sure,
there's plenty of other guys that I would rather try and pick up and flex.
Especially, I mean, people that are concerned with this week are kind of like, I need to win and get in. It's like, are you really going to ride that on Parker Washington? So, but yeah, that is all for week 14. I guess we'll do 3 more of these for the fantasy playoffs. But appreciate everyone watching. We'll be back with a live stream tomorrow morning. See how many people hop on there, how many people that listen to us made the playoffs. Hopefully everyone, but obviously that's not the case. More Dynasty content to come. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, guys that I would start over like Parker Washington and Trey Tucker. I'm looking at tight ends that are probably available or a decent chance. One of these guys will be. I don't know about if Noah Gray is still available. I'm not really buying into that, but it's like I would start him. I'd start Juwan Johnson. I would start Grant Calcaterra on Philly if he's because Goddard's out. I would start. I mean, look at the tight end position if you can flex one of these guys over Parker Washington or Trey Tucker necessarily. Like,
yeah,
you got to think outside the box a little sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Hopefully you're not down that bad, but that is all. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and we will be shifting more towards Dynasty content as the fantasy regular season comes to an end. But yeah, appreciate everyone, and we will see you guys in the live stream tomorrow.